Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Faith for Dummies. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hi, Izzy. I'm good, thanks. Happy. How are you?
Good. Oh, that's nice. I'm happy. I'm happy. It's a good time of year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a busy time of year at the moment, but
yes, it is.
But it's good. So many things happening in my life. Anyway, We'll talk about that on another episode. So today we are chatting to some of Rob's friends called Luke and Gary. They are twins and they are sharing their testimony basically. And it's a slightly longer chat because there's two of them. So we're going to head straight into it. And I'm pretty sure they share some dummy moments, don't they? So you can have their dummy moments. But anything you wanted to say just before we jump in?
Just apologies, everyone, if I adopt their Brummie accent that they have. So there you go.
Yes, if Rob suddenly turns Brummie halfway through, then just ignore that.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, over to you, Rob, in the studio with Luke and Gary.
Thanks, Izzy, in the studio. I'm joined here with Luke and Gary. Why don't you guys just briefly introduce yourselves for us? Tell us a bit about what you do.
My name's Luke and I'm a youth worker. Been working with young people for the last 15 years now. I'm currently working for a charity based in Birmingham, operating mentoring programs and running youth groups and just trying to get them involved with a lot of youth activities.
Nice one. Thanks.
So my name's Gary. I am a chef full-time. I have studied youth work as well. This year, September, I've started doing some mentoring for Luke's charity, which is based in a school. That's kind of been my step back into doing some youth work, some face-to-face work with young people. It's been a good learning curve for me the last year or so, getting back into it, being around young people regularly. So it's good to have the opportunity to be around young people and doing something different as well. I've never done mentoring before. I've done mainstream youth work in different settings, but never done direct mentoring before, and that's great. And chef full time, but looking to kind of like slowly walk my way out of that job.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you both, first of all, for coming on the podcast. Luke and I actually met at uni. In fact, I met Gary at your church. I went to help Luke at something and then met Gary there. But Gary did to the same degree that Luke and I did the year below us. Nice one. This podcast is called Faith for Dummies, and we do like to share a dummy or a funny moment that has happened to us recently. So, Luke, Gary, I believe you've kind of got a joint one, really, haven't you, involving a housemate?
I have a separate one as well, but I can share.
I'll start with my one first. But this is not a dummy moment, but more of a funny prank moment. Yeah, so Gary's a housemate at home, and I got keys to Gary's house, and I was there with my youngest daughter, and she did the stinkiest poop ever. And Rob can tell you about poops because he's got children, and sometimes the smell can escape nappy bags, and this one was more than escaping; it was glowing around it. And I thought it was a funny idea to put it under Gary's housemate's pillow in a nappy bag, and then later on, Gary's housemate messaged Gary's because it smelled really bad in there. And then I had to apologize to him for that. And I would do it again.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
So mine was, I work as a chef and most of my day-to-day stuff is very much back and forward. Same routine, but it's very much back and forward in terms of like, I have a set area where I work. I always have to travel to go and get certain items, travel to go and get certain working equipment. And often I always find myself really busy, never stressed out, but busy to the point where I walk over somewhere and I never got what I needed to get. And the thing is, I have a really good work ethic where I clean as I go. So I was putting something back the other day, which I thought was a frozen item, but I ended up putting a tin of beans in the freezer.
Yeah, tin of beans don't go in the freezer. We all know that, don't we?
Well, until you try it, don't knock it.
You ever had frozen beans?
Nope. Just let it defrost.
Nice. You ever had a frozen fruit? That's nice.
A frozen what?
A fruit, like the yogurts.
Oh, the yogurts. Yeah, I have, yeah. They're all right. It's basically just like ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks. We have invited you on today to kind of share your testimony. So you are twins, you're identical twins, even though we can't tell you apart quite easily. And we know that you have a testimony that in coming to faith that is both got similar bits to it and different bits to it. So I thought that would just be interesting really for our listeners to hear, all three of them. But yeah, so thanks for coming on. So I guess really, I'm just going to hand over, just ask the question, say, what's your testimony? How did you come to faith? And let you guys take it away, and hopefully stay quiet as much as possible. Let you guys do the talking.
Thank you, Rob. I'll just speak a bit first, just to give a bit of information around where we kind of grew up. So we're from Birmingham. We grew up in a place called Borsa Heath. Borsa Heath is known as Sodom, and you would have heard Sodom in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah. So back in the day in Borsa Heath was never a pleasant place. It was full of prostitution, full of gangs. You just put Borsa Heath in the 70s in Google. We even had our own red light district. And we are brought up in this area, and we're the youngest of 8 children, and our oldest brothers can remember what the area was like when they first started growing up in the area. So that's kind of just setting where we come from. And the 80s and 90s were better. There was less prostitution, there was less gangs, but there was still a lot of it around. For us, when we were young people as well, there was a lot of gang post-Cold Wars. Well, I'll let Luke carry on a bit more.
When we ask that question, what's our testimony? I don't think our testimony is finished. I think we're still learning about who we are as people, but also learning about how God's working in our lives. I guess we can share the very brief start of our testimony. But yeah, but similar to what Gary was saying, with the whole issue around the area not being safe, there was a lot of prostitution. There were known pimps in the area. And actually, our church at the time became kind of a refuge for prostitutes to come inside the church and feel protected. And actually, funny, even if this is a story for another time, but the church that we go to, they set up a project called Jericho, and that became a big project in Birmingham called the Jericho Project. And our youth club was named the Jericho Youth Club when we first started going there. So our church was quite pinnacle in stopping that prostitution in the area, which is pretty cool. And there was other community that was involved in that as well. But yeah, crazy stuff. No, because I think we have parts of our story that are very similar. But I think my faith journey started when I was a lot younger, when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Stuff that I never told Gary about because he's not a very mature person, you see. I'm only joking, but my faith journey started when I was about 8 years old. When I was very young, I used to jump out of my bed quite often during the middle of the night and run to the bathroom. And the reason was because I was having this dream quite often where I was just in this tank and there was no escape in this tank, and it was just filling up with water. And it was absolutely terrifying. I remember it just basically, like every other dream or nightmare we have, usually what wakes us up is a bit of panic. And when it got to filling to the top is when I panicked, and that's when I kind of gasped for air. And then I woke up, and the first thing I would do is I would always jump out of my bed and run to my bathroom. And most of the time in our house, when we were kids, the bathroom light was always left on. So I would always jump out of my bed and just run towards the light. But also there was a time when I used to be really afraid of dying as well, because I didn't think there was anything after when I was very young. And the thought of dying would just make me just jump out of my skin as well and jump out of bed and run towards the light. And funny enough, since I gave my life to Christ, I haven't really experienced that.
Yeah.
And that's because the light is not in my bathroom anymore, it's within me. And I think that's really key.
That's such a funny and yet wholesome sentence. The light is not in the bathroom anymore, it's within me. It's a good sentence. I like that. Were your family Christian?
No. None of our family were Christian.
That's probably untrue, Rob.
Yeah.
Recently, we just lost both our parents. We lost our mum just gone in November, and we lost our dad in April.
In February,
sorry. And leading up to my mum's funeral, we got to kind of learn a bit more about our mum, because, when you lose somebody in your life, you start to reflect on a lot of stuff about them. And only to the last couple of months, I actually realized that my mum actually planted a seed in me, because what I discovered at my dad's funeral is my auntie was sitting there, my mum's sister, by herself, and I went and sat with her. Don't really know her. Like the age gap between us is about 50 years. So we've kind of known our family the least amount of time compared to all our siblings. And as I was speaking to my auntie, she was kind of just revealing how much my mum loved the church and how much my mum was a part. Because my mum was a part of the Salvation Army, and I feel like if you're going to be a part of the Salvation Army, you have to have some form of faith. And this is something that I learned that my mum did. She was a part of the Salvation Army throughout her teenage years, and my mum would always say to me before, when we started going to church, "Oh, can you say a prayer for me?" And my mum always used to say good night and God bless to me. So for me, even though I would say that our family are not from a Christian background, I'd always say my mum carried faith with her and had a bit of faith, even though she was never practicing. She had an understanding of church, understanding of faith from her knowledge. She was a part of the Salvation Army. And she'd always ask me to pray for her. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I never really gathered my thoughts around it before.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you for telling that.
But to add on to that, our family, we wouldn't call them as Christians because they didn't attend church. They weren't practicing Christians. My dad was quite old-fashioned. He just said we're Church of England, which just meant we was white.
Yeah. It's interesting Luke shared earlier about the fact that one thing that probably brought him to faith was that he used to wake up panicking about death. That happened to me as well. I don't think I've shared that. I used to think about that late at night. It never woke me up. I used to think about it, and that used to scare me, which is quite interesting because we're identical twins, and we've got this twin power, you see, Rob. But one thing that really molds both of our journeys in Christ is the community that we kind of got set up in. Myself and Luke, we have a good set of friends around us, and we've had the same friendship group since we've been about 10. And we kind of journeyed together. Some kind of left the group, or one passed away, but we kind of carried on journeying together. So what kind of started us even going to church in the first place was we had the flexibility of being able to go out whenever we wanted to when we were younger. And we'd attend this park all the time, play football, and every Friday there was a youth group, a youth van actually. There was this really, really massive guy called Barry, and it was kind of like, you ever seen Pimp My Ride?
Yeah,
It was like a converted like bus van, whatever. But it was very pimped out on the inside. You walk in, they had a nice flat screen TV, and they always used to bring equipment to play with, more equipment than you'd get from anywhere else. He used to pull up in front of a sports center that never really used to give us any equipment, whereas he would give us anything and everything that he had. And we thought that was really cool. So we kind of really invested going there for like, I'd say a good year. And then we met a guy called Ned Flanders.
Is that Mike?
Yeah. We met Mike. And I think Mike was a youth worker, and he must have just wanted to come venture out and see what was happening. Because before we even went to the youth club, Jericho Youth Club, it was already very well established. It had so many young people there. It was popping. But for us, all these young people were like in the 16 to 18. A lot of the younger ones went as well. You'd go in it was just havoc. And you'd see all these people and you think, wow, okay, I don't really like the idea of coming here every week. I'd rather go and chill on the bus outside or go and play football. As soon as we went over there, we did go over there with our group. Mike kind of took a liking to us, where he recognised our area as well, just to throw it in there, is mostly Muslim now. So in these Muslim communities, it's always hard to do outreach. As a Christian, if you're going to go out there, do some youth work, get some young people into the church, tell them about Jesus, or tell them however you want to tell them in whatever capacity you're going to tell them. Because the Edward Rhodes model at the time was they had a youth group for the wider community, and then they had a youth group for the church. And initially what we got introduced to was the youth club to the church, which meant we was able to build relationships with the young Christians that were helping out there. And also the representatives from the church that was there, and they kind of took a liking to us and said, how about you guys, if you guys want to learn more about this, you guys want to learn more about that, why don't you come join us? And if I'm being totally honest with you, Rob, the only reason I went over there was because there was girls. And that's what probably attracted all of my friends as well. Even Luke married one of those girls. So that's what kind of attracted us to them, because not just because we went there for girls, we went there actually to make friends with people. What do you think about that, Luke?
And I think it's just important to one of the things that I find very important in our journey is that the person that took us to church was actually one of our Muslim friends from the community. It was one of the guys that we went to school with, and he was always playing football in the park. It was like, you come over to this youth club in the church. And obviously we didn't even know what a youth club was. And the first time I ever been in that church was on a year 4 trip, when we went there, and I was pretending to be drunk after I tried the communion wine, and it's just basically juice. I was acting drunk like an idiot in year 4. But yes, it was interesting. But what Gary's saying is correct. But it happened over a few years. So when we were like 13 years old, when we started going to this community youth group, like Gary said, we met Mike, and he could see God working in our lives, and that's what it came down to. And he wanted to invest in that relationship with our group. And that's kind of how it worked. And we didn't really join that Christian youth club until we were like 15 to a couple of years later. But in the meantime, I remember Mike and the other youth leader putting like a homework club for us, and was getting us involved in doing other stuff as well. So they was really investing in that small little group. To be honest, compared to some of the other kids in the youth group, we were actually quite pleasant kids, because some of them was just off their rocket. And then after all that, I think what kept us really going is just because it was a space where we felt valued. Like for me, Gary, home life was hard. It's important to recognize in our family, like a lot of our parents were alcoholics for a long time. Like my mum was a functioning alcoholic. She could drink all night and then get up for work in the morning and function like nothing happened. It was absolutely mad. I don't know how she did it. And because if your parents are alcoholics and they smoke, it's a photo system. So my older brothers all drank and smoked as well. And because they're a lot older than us, they had friends that would come to the house. So often me and Gary found ourselves being peacemakers all the time, always stopping and preventing stuff happening in the house, which we shouldn't have done. So even though we felt secure at home in terms of protection, it wasn't our safe place. And we didn't feel valued at school either, because we weren't naughty kids at school, but we wasn't high achievers. We was kind of in that middle bracket where we kind of just fell through the filter of, actually, if we got a little bit more support, we would have achieved a lot more.
100%.
Yeah, so we didn't feel that value at home. When we felt valued at home, we didn't feel that it wasn't our safe space, and we didn't feel valued at school because we just didn't feel like the teachers really cared about us. But as soon as we stepped foot into that church, we felt valued. We felt this was a safe space. We messed about so much and they never turned us away. They continued loving us. And I think that was really important. But after Mike was there for a while, but he wasn't the only youth worker that impacted us. Steve came along when we was about 16 years old. And Steve was an employee of the church as a youth worker. The way Steve worked with us was just amazing, because he loved us unconditionally, and because we messed about so much, but he still got us involved. He didn't judge us based on what we did wrong, but he saw the potential of what we did right. Although he would always pull us to the side and tell us off. But this is what led me and Gary getting involved in a lot of ministries from a very young age. So at the age of 16, 17, me and Gary was involved in just a normal youth club. We was involved in taekwondo lessons, breakdancing lessons. We was leading Sunday schools. We was supporting, leading like residentials. And we was doing this for 16, 17-year-olds. I'm not gonna lie, we was making mistakes along the way all the time, but it's a part of the process is learning, isn't it? And when you have a mentor in place like we did with Steve, it was okay. And there was times when me and Gary would clash constantly. We would just come up to each other and just swear in each other's ears saying you're doing a rubbish job. It happens so often.
I still do it to Luke.
And that's what happened. And then we started attending church, because we felt valued on the days when there was offering provision. Then on a Sunday, when we first walked through the building, we were welcomed with open arms. And I must say, like, there were so many people just happy for us to be there, regardless of what we looked like, how we was dressed, and what we smelled like. And what I mean by what we smelled like, we grew up in a household where everyone smoked. So me and Gary was walking. We smelled like cigarettes constantly.
They used to call me Ashtray.
Really?
Nah.
But people would often ask us for cigarettes, and we're just like, we don't smoke, but we just smell of smoke.
Yeah.
Eventually, my parents had to stop smoking and drinking because of health reasons. And that's when we kind of realized, okay, the house smells cleaner. But then when we used to go to church, people didn't bat an eyelid to that, didn't care. I think I had one incident in church as a young person, and that's because I wore a hat, and someone had an issue with that. But there's a whole context of why people wear hats and shouldn't wear hats in churches. And I know it's in the Bible, but there's a context to it. More than happy to do a whole new podcast on why young people wearing hats in church is absolutely fine. I lead worship today. I'll wear a hat. I'll preach at the front. I'll wear a hat. I do this podcast and I'm not wearing my hat.
I got asked to take my hat off once in a church I was visiting, but they phrased it in a way was, they whispered in my ear, the guy showed me to a seat and was like, and if you'd like to take your hat off or something like that, then that would be good, or something like that. So I took it off for that song or that bit, and then when we started singing again, I put it back on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I wear my hat just to cover the light out sometimes, because it helps me focus. And
that's what it's for, though, isn't it?
To hide your forehead.
Hide that forehead in it there. But yeah, so after all that happened with Steve, we started getting heavily involved in church. We started attending church. Well, the significant part of our story comes when we were about 17, when we go on this youth residential called Youth Transformed. And the whole purpose of this residential is for us to get out of the city, be in an environment where there's worshiping going on, be in small groups. Then it's basically just a space where we can have discipleship and fellowship. And Gary can tell us a little bit more about that, what it was like.
I think our testimonies are slightly different when it comes to like now giving our life to Christ, but I would agree that that was probably the pinnacle for both of us. So Youth Transform was an outreach project that was set up for several churches in urban areas, I would say. I think the biggest thing for me, I'm just going to touch back on the stuff that Luke was talking about earlier, is when Steve came to the youth group and fulfilled his role as a youth pastor. He really did take us on board, and he did send me home once for something I did because I was just being too dumb. But it was just more the patience he had with me, and it's more the community that he brought together. Yeah. So what would happen is that me and Luke would kind of stay around, but all our friends wouldn't come to these things anymore. Other people would be there as well, like from the other Christian youth group, but it would only kind of be me and Luke. But then we would get invited over to one of their houses, like Mercy's house, for example, because that's Mercy's parents, Karen and Ian, would always host parties or Bible studies and stuff like that. I would go over there, and I've never been fed so much. I've never been able to kind of enjoy myself freely. Yeah. So taking us up to Youth Transformed, it was a different sense of community. It just felt so safe being there because we knew that we weren't the same as other people, but we was very much similar in the same boat. Everyone was kind of like trying to understand the purpose and to try and find something about themselves, trying to build on a relationship with God. It's very cliche when you ask the young person, why have you come here? One person said, I'm here to get a close relationship with God. But it's not cliche. It's actually the fact that I've come here for that, and I've come here to have fun. And if those two things can merge and happen together, then my week's been fulfilled. It's what I wanted. And I went to that Youth Transformed, seeing a different type of church. We was so used to seeing Edward Road, which was great. Edward Road was good, but this kind of took it to a whole another level. And that was really eye-opening for us. And it was just the support from people your own age was very overwhelming and very underestimated on the impact that it probably had on us as individuals. Because as soon as you walked out of Youth Transformed, as soon as you walk away from your youth camps, you feel like a new person, very energized. But I think Luke could talk more about when he was baptized and a bit more about him, and I could share a bit more about myself after.
So I was 17 years old when I chose to get baptized. So we had Youth Transformed in the summer, and then I turned 17 in December, and then Easter Sunday was coming up, and at that time there was a lot of baptism lessons happening, and I just thought, you know what, it's time for me to get baptized. I want to do it, and I just assumed that in the moment, as soon as I'm dunked and come out of that water, that the Holy Spirit was going to descend on me like a dove. Like it happens to Jesus when he's baptized. Yeah. But that's just not reality, because baptism doesn't save you. Baptism doesn't give you the Holy Spirit. My salvation in Christ came by just the words that I uttered, that Jesus, will you be my savior? I choose you now.
Yeah.
And I did that at Youth Transformed 9 months prior, and getting baptized was just me just telling the whole world that I choose Jesus because he chose me first.
Yeah.
And that's what started me on my journey of faith, is recognizing that. But I don't regret getting baptized at 17 or at that time, because that was such a big lesson for me to understand why baptism is important, but why it's not crucial as well in that moment in terms of my salvation. But that led me down a line of actually learning about the Bible a little bit more, learning a bit about who Jesus is a bit more, which ultimately led me to doing a degree in youth work and theology alongside Rob, and then later Gary joining us. When we was on placement doing a degree in theology, I had to preach a lot, I had to do Sunday school, discipleship group. And when you invest in exploring all this stuff, you're taking it in as well. When you have to teach someone about Jesus, you have to teach yourself daily about it too. And I think that's really important about our testimony, and also just in our own discipline as well. We have to make that time and that effort. We have to be obedient, but we have to be really disciplined in being obedient as well. Because life gets a bit carried away sometimes, especially having kids now. I struggle more now to open up my Bible than I ever have, but there's such a need for me to open it right now than I ever had as well. Do you know what I mean? Because my kids need to see me engaging with God's word, and then they can ask me questions, and then we can explore it together. And that's something I plan on doing.
Yeah, good stuff, Luke. So I think for me to kind of like draw close on where for my testimony, it's all community based. And one thing that I chose not to do was, as soon as I came out of Youth Transformed at the age of 17, I chose not to kind of like expose myself to too much of something that I didn't understand fully what I was getting myself into. So I was very much aware that I wanted to be a part of this community, and I wanted to kind of endure it, to see how long I could do it for. I know many people that have kind of chosen to become a Christian, and then I've kind of just stepped back because, you know what, that's not the most important thing that happened in my life at the moment. And people have other things going on in their life, things that they probably prioritize. I think are more important to kind of explore in a relationship with Jesus. So where I found myself getting baptized, I got baptized at the age of 21. And one thing that I always struggled with, I was kind of like being a double agent. That's saying I was Gary that someone actually like went to church, but then I was also Gary that would kind of go like I'm a Bolton, I'm a part of this family, and I go out drinking and do and stuff like that. I could do what I want because I'm an adult. So there was these two lives that I was kind of living, and I thought, how do I make my two lives become one life? How can I, like, it's never that I was ever hiding anything or I didn't think I could do something. For me, it was more like a tug of war in my head, and I'm a conscience of, okay, where am I? Where do I stand? When I was around 21, I kind of came to the realization is that I like to drink a bit of alcohol. I don't like to go out and get drunk and stuff like that. But at the time when I was young, it was just what everyone was doing and my friends and whatnot. But it was just more about sculpting the ultimate person I wanted to be. And then it kind of hit me one day that I kind of need to start kind of like thinking about living two different lives. And I'm actually just Gary who goes to the pub. I'm Gary that likes watching football. I'm Gary that goes to youth club. I'm Gary that goes to church on a Sunday. I started understanding that my one body was not too split, and I always struggled with that. And I used to feel really guilty about things all the time. When I was age 21, I decided to follow Jesus because I thought, you know what, there's nothing wrong with me following Jesus and living a life for him and having other things happening in my life. Because one thing that I realized is that we all make mistakes, and I'm not saying that I lived two different lives, so my other life was a complete mistake. I'm not saying that. It's just more, I used to think there was a requirement to being a Christian. And then I started understanding a bit more about Christianity, a bit more about myself, my own faith, my own relationship with Jesus. And it's all personal. It's all about me and God and my relationship. And I don't have to measure that. So I decided to get baptized when I was 21 because my life might not always be going in the way I want it to go. But at least it's going to be going in the direction, knowing that I know God and have a relationship, and I can turn to him for anything. And that's how I kind of live my life now. So after the age of 21, I kind of still went through chilling with my old friends, still going to parties, but still going to church on Sundays, still doing my youth work, still being able to merge my communities. So, for example, like one of the ministries that me and Luke started back in the day was we started a football ministry. And within that football ministry, what you would have is our own friends that we grew up with some church people, and it's always mixed. And I'm kind of like that merger where people can meet one another and hopefully conversations can happen. So I feel like I'm blabbing on about this a bit.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's good. Like, I think that you've both shared things that are similar to both of you, but also quite different, which has been really interesting to hear. So I suppose it's just me asking, is there anything else that you think you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah. Now, just one thing I've learned along this journey so far is that God doesn't want to be your number one. He doesn't expect to be your number one. And what I mean by that is that God blessed me with children. He blessed Rob with children. He blessed Gary with a child on the way. God knows we have to put our child first. God knows we have to put our partners, our wives first. God doesn't want us to put him first in all situations, but he wants to be the center of everything. And I think that's something I've learned recently, and it's so key. As long as God's in the center of what we're doing, he doesn't have to be first because the ultimate focus is on Jesus.
I was wondering where you were going with that when you said God doesn't want us to be first.
Yeah.
But no, it makes sense. Like I heard I think it was an Instagram reel where this guy had a chest of drawers and was like, here's your priorities going up the chest of drawers of like, here's God, but all of a sudden he's pushed down because your baby's crying and now you've got to deal with that. He's like, he doesn't want to be the top drawer. Like he wants to own all of it. He wants to be in it and through it. And it's exactly what you're saying and at the center of it.
Anything from you, Gary?
I think touching on what Luke just said, I would always say something that was so key for me, and you probably heard it in the podcast already, is that sense of building the community and being together. As soon as I went into Edward Road Baptist Church, I was initially welcomed. I was welcomed by Michael, welcomed by Steve. When I went to the youth group, the church youth group, I was welcomed by everybody there. And then when we went started attending on Sundays, I was welcomed there as well. I think my advice for young people, it's church is a scary place, but it's also a really safe place and a good place to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, thanks very much for everything that you shared. I really appreciate it. And now I'm just going to hand back to Izzy.
Great. Thank you so much, Luke and Gary, for chatting to us. Rob, was there anything that you wanted to pull out of that interview and remind us of?
I think just like hearing their story and being like reminded about the people that played a part in it. And I met Steve and I've met Mike. And yeah, I just thought it was really like nice really to go over it and stuff. And I think that what I really liked about the testimony is how it was kind of focused on community and being accepted by the church and the community and the youth leaders that met them for the first time, and not really being bothered by what they smelt like because of the cigarette smoke that they shared and not shared a cigarette. And and how like they just kept welcoming them back and everything. And I think that's just when you've been in youth ministry a long time and you know those stories and you see them grow up and whatnot, it's just really nice. And it reminded me of some of stories I've heard over the years, and it's just a really interesting, really nice to hear. So that's what kind of stood out for me. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. So we can say that next week we are going to be talking about fasting or fasting, depending on your accent. So yeah, look forward to that next week. I'll see you then, Rob.
See you then, Izzy. Bye, everyone.
Bye.